is Ben Skemper. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Joey Rault. Joey is the head of enterprise sales at Square. Joey, you actually started that team, didn't you, a couple of years ago?
Yep.
Yeah.
Through lots of effort and coaching through your end, created the vision and manifested the reality.
You manifested that team, baby. So head of enterprise sales at Square. And Joey, we've had a lot of awesome, I don't know, just memories over the years. All the events going all the way back to, I always talk about our first trip in Guatemala and that volcano experience where we had to, we got stuck up there, had to carry those two dudes off that was quite the journey. But anyways, Joey, welcome to the show today. And I'd love to just start by, hearing about your journey in sales, particularly as you've been working with Abundant, because when you started working with us a couple of years ago, you were an account executive doing really well. And now, 3.5 years later, you are leading enterprise sales at Square. That is a company valued at $60 billion plus right now. I don't know where the stock price is today. I'm sure you do.
It was 60 billion a month ago, and now it's 100 billion. I don't know why, but we'll go with it.
All right, $100 billion company. Yeah. So you've had quite the journey, and today we're excited to hear a little bit more about that. But let's start from the beginning and when things really changed for you in a big way.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. That Guatemala trip was fucking awesome. For those who don't know, we essentially summited a volcano starting at midnight in a hailstorm.
Keep going.
That's all you need to know. It
only got
crazier
stuck.
from there.
Our guides didn't. So then we saw a volcano erupt, right?
Our guides broke rapport with the volcano.
They broke rapport with the volcano
by setting off some fireworks on our way down to celebrate our accomplishment. And I'm not joking, when within 5 fucking minutes after the fireworks were set off, which fireworks are more like mini poppers, the guys realized we were lost, and it took us I don't know, that was probably 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And then it took us 3 to 4 hours to get back down the mountain, and at one point we just skied down these rocks because we couldn't find the path, and 2 guys who were conservatively at least 200 or 250 pounds sprained ankles or sprained ACLs. It was rough, but really fun. I was carrying someone 250 pounds. I don't know how.
Dude, that's where you bonded. Because I think you and I were carrying Eric together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was. I just remember being so hungry when we got to the bottom, and we just had bread, and everyone just annihilated 5 loaves of bread. That was a journey. That was great. That was a good one. And then we slept the whole next day. We didn't get home till 7 a.m. That was a great adventure. My adventure in sales, what's interesting is I came into Square, I took a risk, right? I was in a really fun, cool job in consulting, working on some really interesting, innovative projects across some of the biggest companies in the world, across financial services, banking, healthcare, pharmaceuticals. Got lucky there and made some really good as a really young consultant, made some great relationships with some partners and had great access to their deals and their networks, and ultimately just realized that I didn't want to be in consulting. I for my career, I don't really know what ignited that thought, but I do remember thinking in 2050, which for me was I think that's like when you set your 401k and like they give you the 5-year tranche. I think maybe it was 2055. Anyway, I think I was going through that and speaking through it now. I was like, oh, 2055, like my 401k will become available. Like, what the fuck?
Purpose of life.
And I was like, why do my dad's very conservative. He's like, you know, make sure you do at least 5 to 10% in your 401k. Anyway, 2055, I was like, well, what am I going to be doing in 2055? And that was like 2013, 2014, 2013, 2013. 2013 was a really rough year for me personally. Had just dislocated my shoulder, sprained an ACL, had some herniated discs in my back, broke up with a girlfriend. And then I started thinking, like, where do I want to be in 2055? And the big thing for me is like, I want to be one of these companies that's making a massive impact. And to me, that was like, at the time, I was like, that's got to be a technology company. I really want to get in at the ground floor or close to the ground floor in one of these big companies. At the time, that was like an Uber, an Airbnb. I was very intimately familiar with Square because of my work in financial services. And so, yeah, so I jumped in, took a big risk, quit my high-paying consulting job, literally took a 50% pay cut to jump into Square, got into sales, read some entrepreneurship books that were like, there's 2 things in business: building a product, selling a product. I knew I wasn't great at building, don't have an engineering background. So I said, let me get good at that other part. And I got into Square, and I had no fucking idea what I was doing for most of it, and just learning about from osmosis from people on the desk, and had a lot of fun building really good relationships. And by like end of 2016, I had established myself as pretty good at sales, but also wasn't feeling good about where I was at in my life. I was living for the checks. I was living for the weekend. I was partying a ton Thursday, Friday, Saturday, living in New York City. I took full advantage of like the ability to create my own schedule. I rarely went to the office because I didn't need to. And it was in those states I would wake up 9 a.m. and it's like, just go back to bed. There was nothing really for me to get up out of bed for. And I just, I'm painting a very drastic picture. I was like happy in my ignorance. And I was having a good time in my ignorance. But also like there was this thing underneath of like, why am I doing this? Is this what I want? Am I happy? Maybe you've been there, maybe you're there. And in 2017, things continued, and Zach Wagner reached out to me over LinkedIn, saying something totally abstract that I had no idea what he was talking about. I was intrigued. And my former boss, Mike Cassetta, gave a roaring review of Ben and Abundant, formerly Epic. And I was like, great, this sounds good. I haven't really had any, at that time, I was, interestingly, 3 years into my sales career and had no formal sales training. I was like, great, this is going to be awesome. I'm just going to go get some sales training and become even better at sales. And that will like really help me create more freedom in my life. And yeah, I mean, that first immersion just completely shattered my mindset of like what life is about. It was, interestingly enough, on my 30th birthday, that immersion. And that was just a really powerful moment for me to realize like my old identity was breaking, because my old identity would have woken up, somewhere exotic, hungover on my 30th birthday. But instead I woke up like in a hotel room, like with a notebook, thinking about my values, thinking about like, who do I want to be? What type of legacy do I want to create? What are the priorities for me to invest in to create fulfillment? Um, what does my biology need to look like? What does my emotional state need to look like? What do my decisions need to look like? What does my strategy need to look like? What is my purpose? What's my North Star? And so that was just a fucking hell of 3 days for me, and really changed my perspective around my path. And not to say like everyone's first immersion needs to be as kind of groundbreaking as that was, but that really set the tone. And then and then 3 months later, I found myself on that volcano in Guatemala. So, it really, for me, it really happened really quickly. And while that, course correction was maybe a 90-degree turn, I still feel like I'm only 2 to 3% on this journey, and really scratching the surface of what's possible for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been quite the journey. And I think I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, I mean, at that time you were an account executive, right? When you came to that event, right? And then
Yeah.
you were promoted to being a manager within a year. And then within a year of being a manager, you opened up the enterprise team. And so, if you think about that big shift that weekend in
Yep.
really, and something that's really important is you got really oriented towards the journey, towards the path. And that's where the values become a big paradigm shift, because values are how you make decisions on the journey to get to the direction of your vision. But a lot of people are viewing the entire journey as whether or not they're on track for the destination. It's like they're measuring against the end versus doing whatever they can to be aligned with their direction right where they're at. So for you, kind of committing to the journey, releasing attachment from the destination, even though you have vision, right? Even though you had vision then, what's the impact that had on you, those around you, and what did that open up even for Square? You can connect those dots.
Yeah, a lot of dots, but fundamentally it's like have purpose to my day, and like hold myself accountable to the day. And in my previous world, I'd never even written my values down on a piece of paper, right? And that's like one of the first exercises that we used to do. Hopefully we still do in this program. And that was just like, oh wow, like I'm in charge of my values. Like I hadn't ever, like, as crazy as that sounds, like a 30-year-old man had never like realized I'm in charge of my own values. And that was, and I still lead this exercise every year with the team. And now it's the global sales organization at Square. It's 500 plus people who go through this exercise to write down their values. And the values to me are what I would call like your personal accountability matrix. It's really only matters to you, like who you show up to be, how you step into those values, and no one's grading you besides yourself. And that's why it's a personal accountability matrix. And I never really thought about it that way in terms of like, oh, today, I want to have courage or creativity or prioritize my health, and like how do I do those things day in, day out, and build that relentless momentum. And it was through that, right, through stepping into that identity, which was really just a set of values. I still remember those values: presence, health, energy, appreciation, and leadership. Stepping into those values every day, or like making it conscious, like writing it, having it on my desk, that I was able to like really magnetize others towards this vision of creating an enterprise team at Square. And for those who aren't familiar, Square is an amazing company, traditionally very SMB focused, like very focused on businesses under $5 million in revenue, really under $1 million in revenue. And that's our sweet spot. That's our bread and butter, if you will. It's where we focus pretty much all of our product development and marketing. And I was finding opportunity for us to win these 20, 50, $100 million accounts. And it was really around creating an energy that this was something that wasn't just me, that this was something that we could do together as a company, that like this was a fun opportunity, an amazing opportunity to grow the business, to impact the business, to impact more customers, to help not just the larger customers, but to show the smaller customers who want to be those larger customers, hey, we can work with you too, and we can help you grow to that size. And that was a really powerful transformation. And then just stepping into that identity, right? Like I had really been living that account executive life where it was all about me, and stepping into those values, especially the value of leadership and the value of appreciation. That's not about me, that's about others and really helping others. And so stepping into that was a big transformation over the following 6 to 12 months, which ultimately opened up that manager opportunity and the opportunity to start hiring.
Yeah. You're connecting the dots well, my friend. So that's your journey. And, our journeys merged a little bit further as you continue to grow in your leadership at Square and earning more trust throughout the organization with the way you were showing up and building your team and opening up new business. Quite frankly, people just started to listen to you more. You started to have more influence. And you helped bring us in to do our first engagement with the sales core leadership team, which was about 2 years ago. Yeah, what is that? Is that actually? Yeah, it's about 2 years ago, coming up on. And there's since then, there's work that we've been doing to support the culture, particularly with the leadership team within sales at Square. And Joey, you've been both pivotal in making that happen, but also pivotal in helping that really spread throughout the rest of the sales organization and beyond. And I'm just, I think it's interesting to hear from you what you've noticed as, we've started working with the culture at Square. What have you noticed changing? And what is the impact that you've seen that have? And what have you stepped into? Like what has Square done? We facilitate, but you and the rest of the leadership team of sales at Square have done all of the work in creating it. So what have you noticed in that journey over the last 2 years?
One of my coaches says business is about the quality of the problems and questions you ask yourself. That was you, Ben. I said that.
Who is that?
So what I've noticed is that by up-leveling how we hold ourselves accountable to our own leadership as individuals and lowering the walls, the natural walls, the masks that we put on as colleagues, as peers at the leadership level, by creating stronger connections, by really leading with vulnerability at the leadership level, we're able to solely focus on the most challenging, the most difficult business problems, the most powerful questions that face our team. And we're able to trust that we will handle those tactical things as they need to be handled. And so that's the big uplift for us. Is I'm sure many of you have go into meetings, or if you're on a leadership committee or any type of project committee, and you have 30 minutes in these meetings, maybe an hour, and often you spend 60-80% of your time focused on something that like could have been an email, or really is not the most powerful set of questions. It's not about what's the vision, about where we're going, what are the big rocks, what are the biggest opportunities for us, who do we need to be to step into this opportunity, right? Those are the big questions. And if you can create the culture where it's like you're spending 80% of your time on the big stuff, 20% of the time on the small stuff, then you're going to see incredible results. And I mean, frankly, we are seeing incredible results. I was joking, like we just hit $100 billion in market cap. And the all of the headcount and investment for 2021 came out, the team that's getting the biggest investment is the sales team as a percentage of dollars. Like, that's not a coincidence, you know. 2 years ago, the enterprise team was literally me and a handful of other people. And by the end of next year, we'll be a 35-person team, 55 if you include account management. The global sales team will be a 600-person team, doubling in size overnight almost. So I think, that is the output. That's the output of asking those challenging questions. That's the output of creating that connection at the leadership level.
Yeah, and thinking back even to that first weekend when we were in Soma in that little interesting apartment, and we watched the Warriors. That's where I'll never forget that game, because that's where, did Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson get injured in the same game? Is that what it was?
Yeah, something like that.
It was nutty. Yeah. But if you think about the culture then, like that was an interesting time. It was a transition. Ashley was coming into her role, and there was a bit more transition in things weren't as stable as they are now.
Sure.
And there was a lot of intentional investment into really creating the culture that exists today. So if you could just explain the gap, what's the gap between what the culture is like today and where it was like then, particularly with the leadership?
Yeah, I think I see this in a lot of our partner businesses, and also when I talk with colleagues about their business. It's a tactical, like, get shit done mindset that also can also draws a very fine line between, like, pointing fingers. Who's going to do this? Who did that? What will they do with him or her? How can we get her to do this or this team to do that? And that's one way to lead. What's the list of stuff we need to get done? Who's going to do it? Let's assign it and go do it. And then there's another way of, like, what's the most powerful vision that we have for this team over the next year, over the next 3 years, thinking bigger, thinking broader, thinking deeper about not just the get shit done list. Because if you're in this meeting, if you are, investing in yourself in this way, I'm gonna make a pretty educated guess that you're really fucking good at getting shit done. And so if you're in a manager position or director position or an executive position, I'm also going to guess you're probably really good at getting shit done. And so getting shit done is actually not what you need to be talking about 80% of the time at the leadership level, because we all know it's going to get done. Right. And so I think that's the dichotomy between where we were and where we were and where we are today.
Awesome. Yeah. And there's the riddle that we always talk about, which is when a ship's at sea and it encounters a fierce storm, who's the most important person on the ship? Right?
The bartender.
The bartender. That's right. You got it. Yeah. The person who designs the ship. And the ship is culture, and the sea is the uncertainty of the world. And so I'm just connecting the dots myself, because I remember telling that riddle to Ashley in our first meeting, and her really understanding that and seeing the importance of investing into culture and strengthening the ship. And, big shout out to Ashley, and a lot of credit for her and how she showed up in this work, because Ashley does all the work that she's asking everybody else to do. And Sales Core does all the work that they're asking the rest of the organization to do. And that's where culture transforms. So if an organization doesn't have the culture embodied at the top, it doesn't work. It never works to be like, hey, come fix the culture of our frontline managers. It's like, well, let's talk about what we're actually infusing into that from the top. Anyways, Ashley and you and the rest of Sales Core have really been all in on that. And then we get to 2020, right?
Yeah.
It's like that big investment started 2 years ago, right? Of not just working with Abundant, but also making it a priority throughout the organization and making it a priority within the meetings. And then we get to a really uncertain sea, a sea that is more uncertain than any of us have ever charted into. And I think my question for you, Joey, is how did the ship hold up?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're building more ships. That ship was great, and it was so great that they want to build more. I mean, I think we maybe that's not the right way of the analogy. Maybe you just add on, I don't know, another deck of the ship. I'll have to think about that one. But yeah, I mean, it was tough. I mean, it was tough for everyone. We didn't know what was going to happen to our business. We had a lot of fear. We had a ton of uncertainty. We knew from speaking to sellers every day. I mean, we're speaking to literally thousands of small businesses, thousands of businesses every week. We knew from the front line what was happening, and we knew that it was going to be devastating to businesses. I don't think we knew how devastating it was going to be from a humanitarian crisis standpoint. That's a whole separate topic. But we flexed. We flexed quickly. We paused hiring, and we put some structures in place that were aligned with our values. We decreased quota. We moved to a more activity-based set of metrics instead of results-based metrics for the time being, because we knew that there was a lot out of our control in the market, a lot of uncertainty in the market. And I'm speaking about some of the tactics, but that was aligned. Those tactics, those strategies were aligned to our vision of who we wanted to be as a team. And so those things, while really challenging decisions, they had to be made, as everyone knows, rather quickly. And our team reacted. And something that I'm really proud of, I know Ashley and the whole leadership team is really proud of, is we ended up reducing quota by 50. I'm just using this metrics as a guidepost. Ended up reducing quota by 50% in Q2. And then the team hit 200% of quota. So essentially we hit our actual original goal in Q2, which is just incredible to think about in the face of COVID. People really, really dug deep, and we're making it happen at the business level. So the culture held up. We did well, and I spoke to our doubling in size. I mean, that able to face that storm, right? That crisis, if you will, at sea, with our culture, we were able to not just weather the storm, but kind of thrive through it.
It's been fun to watch and fun to be a part of. If like the ship of Square's culture is a wooden ship, are we like I'm gonna say like Somali pirates, but like the good kind that come up and like
yeah,
like
I don't know
what's
if
Abundant ship in relationship to Square ship?
Yeah, I need to dig deep on that analogy. My ship game isn't up to where it used to be. I do like Pirates though. Pirates of the Caribbean is like one of my favorite movies. Too bad Johnny Depp kind of
went off the deep end.
Turned out to not be a great guy.
He turned into his character, right? He got too much pirate energy in him.
Yeah. I just love that first scene when he's riding the ship into the dock, and then when he gets to the dock, his ship is sank. I just love that. I think that's so funny.
It's so funny because you look at his life today, and it's like, I don't know, there's something foretelling about that. So
it's true.
Well, hey Joey, I think a last question here in again, how Square has navigated 2020, the culture has held up. You're doubling the sales team. These are huge things. These are huge.
Totally. Massive.
And what do you think Square's doing that other organizations might not be? Like what can other organizations learn from Square in how Square is navigating this time?
I think there's a couple of different levels to that. I think at the sales level, we had really anchored around an identity and a set of values that at the sales, leadership level, and then all the way throughout frontline managers and ICs of like who we want to be, regardless of outcome. And I still think we can do more there. I think that like that's so important. When you have individuals showing up in their most powerful selves, and then you have teams showing up as their most powerful, cohesive unit, like that's where the impacts ripple, right? It's about the individual and then the individual team really making that impact up and down through the company. I also think like if I'm going to pinpoint some values, which if you are listening to this call, you're probably like, this guy won't fucking stop talking about values.
Don't stop talking about values, Joey. Keep doing it.
Square really values transparency. And for anyone joining the company, it can be totally overwhelming because the amount of information that comes out on not a weekly basis, on a daily basis is, over 100 pages of reading if you were to read everything. No one could ever do that. But that transparency creates a connective tissue up and down the organization around what's going on, why we're doing what we're doing, why we're making the decisions we've made, what we're thinking about for future decisions, when we can share that if it's not, gated by public company regulations. I think that creates this connective tissue, as I mentioned, across the company of like, we're in this together. And so I've really encouraged that type of transparency, on the sales floor as well, like with our clients. Hey, like, we don't know what's going to happen. This is how it could work. This is how it could play out. And I think that transparency, that collaboration, that vulnerability, right? I mean, that's ultimately what is being shared at some points in the transparency, like vulnerability, like we don't know what's going to happen. So we're stopping hiring. Like, we don't know. So like, we're stopping. That level of communication, I think is what creates an unbelievable amount of buy-in across all teams globally. So I think that's something that I would encourage everyone to think about. How can you lead more transparently, more collaboratively, more vulnerably with your clients, with your teams, with your leaders above you? Because I think it makes a huge impact in how you show up.
Yeah, the amount of documentation that happens at Square is mind-boggling.
It's insane.
It's insane. But there's definitely something to be learned from that, like you're sharing. And I think if you just hear documentation culture or the amount of business docs that get written, people's first response would be like, just kind of like, like what, really? But when you explain it that way, and the level of transparency that's available and openness in the culture, and also forcing you to think, forcing you to justify your decisions, because they're going to be transparent for everybody to see, right? I can definitely see the power of that.
That's right. And one thing that's really important for us is in this new work from home environment, as a global company, not everyone's working the same hours. And so, recording all of the meetings that are really important, sharing those meeting links out, putting decisions in a written form and sharing those out where people can comment and discuss. It's someone in London and someone in Melbourne and someone in San Francisco and New York, they're all working different schedules. Even two people in New York, one could be me, married, no kids. Someone might have some, 2 or 3 kids at home. We might be working totally different schedules. I know that's getting really tactical, but I think that's the level of transparency and collaboration that's required in the new working world. So that everyone feels as part of the process. Everyone feels like they've been included in the discussion. Yeah,
that's really powerful. Joey, I think we'll wrap there. That's just a great final point to end on. And actually, maybe I'll ask you one more question here, because you tend to be a futurist yourself, right?
Yeah.
What year do you think you're from, Joey?
What year do I think I'm from?
Yeah, what year do
I
you think?
want to be. I want to be from like the year 2250,
Okay, 2250. So
but I'm
Joey,
probably more like from. I'm probably 100 years early.
I think you're plugged into like 2055. You had that moment where you really set your
Yeah,
sights on that, you
that's
know,
right. So I'm like 100 years early. I want to be like 300 years early, but I'm
that
not there yet.
401k moment really impacted you and just tethered you to that year in the future.
Totally. Thank you, Fidelity.
So, you're speaking to how there's a new way that's needed to really include everybody in collaboration. And obviously COVID has shifted the workplace a lot, but Square has now introduced a policy where it's not work from home. I forget what the exact language is, but anybody can work from home in any office in any position for the rest
Yep,
of the history of Square, right?
that's Jack's vision. Absolutely. Yep.
So my question for you, Joey, is what do you think the future of work looks like that Square might be on the leading thread of?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I can speak really specifically from our team. I think this will resonate, hopefully, with most people on this call. Our team thrives off the energy of others. Our traditional like month for us, like we're on the road 2 or 3 times, we're meeting with clients, we're shaking hands, we're going out to dinner with them, we're learning about them as individuals, and we're meeting internally with project management or the engineers or risk or FNS, and we're really like creating a connection there. And so we've been able to succeed in this environment because of the technology and tools that exist for that connection. However, I will strongly say that I would say 80% of the team, 80% of the folks that I've talked to really want to get back to that office. I don't know if we want to get back to the office Monday through Friday, but that in-person connection, the shaking the hands, the hugging, the going to dinner, the laughing together, you can't imitate that digitally. And so I think while I do think the ability to work from home is incredible, and that there's going to be different types of people who thrive in that environment and different types of teams who especially thrive in that environment. I think for especially salespeople, revenue people who are like extroverted, really engaging in conversation, creating connection, there's going to be a need to get back to in-person conversations and in-person collaboration and work. So I think it's a hybrid. I don't think it's going to go like drastically in person. I don't think people are going to get rid of all their offices. I think offices are going to look different. I don't think maybe you need as big a footprint as you did, but I think that there's going to be a nice middle ground there that meets the needs of your employees and the type of work that they're working on.
Awesome. Well, Joey, thanks again for being on today and sharing about your journey, sharing about some of what's happening at Square and the journey of the culture there. And I think it'll be fun to do this again sometime, Joey. 6 months from now, a year from now, hearing how the doubling of the sales force is going. There'll probably be an exciting update to just kind of check in and hear how the journey has continued. So
Awesome. I love that. Thank you, Ben.